Good afternoon and welcome to the Natural Resources, Agriculture and Open Space Subcommittee. I'm your chair, Delegate Regina T. Boyce, and we have pretty good schedule today. We hope to be about an hour. A lot of bills, a lot of amendments, and some pretty much straight through. Okay, can someone let in Dylan?
I don't see Dylan in the waiting room, Madam Chair.
I'm in the Zoom. Okay. Just make sure he has the link. You want to go ahead and get started, Patrick?
Yeah. Can we go through my bills first, just because I have to
Yes,
get on the
that's right. Yes. Yep.
Okay. Well, I'll start with Bill. I'm not really sure what to do with. House Bill 770. It's cross-file. It's the Nix law, the drunk boating bill.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any House amendments on it. I know there are Senate amendments. They're, for the most part, good amendments, I think, but there's a problematic part. And I know that JPR has it on their voting list today. I've talked to their counsel, and he's going to raise the issues that we have.
So Patrick, I'm sorry for our last conversation in my notes. I'm sorry, Leslie, can you resend the link to
Yes, I just resent
okay, because he doesn't have the right one. I thought that you said there was somewhat of a solution, but no. Is it that
well, one of the issues is that this is a subject area that we don't deal with. Now, I'm familiar with it, but
yeah, I understand that.
And I don't know if it might be wise to see what the Senate does today.
Well, they passed the bill as amended per the Senate amendments that were sent to me.
I don't think the JPR told me they're voting on it today.
Right, the bill as amended.
But the amendments have issues, and I don't know if they're going to fix those issues or not.
Okay. Okay, then it's still on hold. I mean, we do need to figure out what we want to do sooner versus later, but then that's on hold. Why don't we go to the next one?
All right, this is 773.
Yep.
This is the Individuals with Disability and Service Disabled Veterans Boating Fund. We have amendments from the sponsor to add surfing to the bill, and I added into the amendments a provision striking the authorization to include funding in the state budget, just leaving it blank on that, letting them fill in the bucket when the time's appropriate.
Okay, did we have that copy? Look, I have a ton of paper here.
Yes, I can pull that up, Madam Chair, if you'd like.
This is the fund to provide sailing, boating, kayaking, canoeing.
Yep. Yeah, I know that. I just
activities.
didn't have it in front of me. So if we can pull this up, and so yes, removing the authorization for the governor to include it in the annual budget.
Just going silent on that.
Right, and we were adding paddleboarding and surfing opportunities for individuals, or it's
well, just surfing,
and then okay.
And I'll note that on page 2, it talks about the fund being consisting of money appropriated from the budget, so it's authorized to take money.
Got it. Okay. I'm going to give folks a few minutes to look over this. Delegate Baker.
Yes, he had mentioned silent on the fiscal note. Just fill in the blanks when it's appropriate.
Yep.
Will it still be $500,000 max?
There is no fiscal note with this because instead of we're essentially creating a program that will be available, and should the governor decide that he wants to fund it, he'd actually have the program to fund it versus telling him to fund it.
Okay, so he'll be able to fund it at the amount that he's comfortable with if he chooses to do so.
Yep,
Correct.
that is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also just wanted to clarify for Delegate Baker that whatever the governor puts in the budget for this would still have to be, go through the money committees here.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to move the amendments?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the, or any discussion? Delegate Baker, you have discussion about the amendment, sir? I guess not. All in favor of the amendments to HB 773, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? The bill is amended.
Second, or move the bill? I don't know where we
Yes.
are. Move
Yes.
the bill is amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the bill as amended? Seeing none, all those in favor of the bill as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any further discussion? The bill moves favorably. Let's go to 1231, Patrick.
Okay.
So as I
This is
understand
the-
it, I got a note on the House floor from Delegate Adams, while at the same time getting a text message from Dylan Baylor about the amendment on this bill that they accept and have no problem with. So Patrick, you can go ahead and then we can hear from DNR.
Okay, well, this bill, well, the amendment strikes the piece that authorized the power dredging in Oyster Bay. So that's stricken from the bill. So all that's really left in the bill is repeal of provisions that prohibit the expansion of sanctuaries or expansion to move the boundaries of sanctuaries until the oyster management plan is complete.
Okay.
And so it repeals that. The oyster management plan has been finished. There's testimony debating that, but
Okay. Dylan, do you want to add anything?
No, I think Patrick summarized it well. With the proposed amendments, it removes the power dredging part in Eastern Bay. So what the bill would do now is remove a provision in current law, in current statute, that prohibits the department from adjusting sanctuary boundaries until an oyster management plan is done. And as Patrick said, the plan itself is done. It's just meandering, working its way through the final regulatory process. But the stance of the department is that the plan is done. So I think we will be able to have the conversation that I think this bill wants us to have in the near term, maybe even probably before this bill would even go into effect. So I think with that, the language in the bill is kind of redundant, or the language in the statute is not needed anymore. So we're supportive of the bill to remove with the amendments. If that made any sense, sorry.
Well, with all due respect, especially to the sponsor, who I really respect, do we need the bill? I think I am lost about what it is actually going to do or not do.
Do you care if I answer, Madam Chair?
Yeah, please.
I think so. In 2019, the legislature passed a bill that basically said that an updated and reformed Oyster Advisory Commission had to develop an oyster management plan for the state through a consensus-based process. And then the year after that, the legislature passed another bill that said the department can't adjust any of the sanctuary boundaries until that oyster management plan through that consensus process is done. That's all in statute. So the consensus process is done and the oyster management plan is done. It's almost fully finalized through the regulatory process. So I would
You're
say,
just repealing 2020 law.
yeah, so I would say the bill is needed to get the redundant statute out of law.
Got it. So not 2019, but 2020.
From my current understanding, yes.
Patrick, is that what we're doing?
Yes. Like I
Okay.
said, there is some question. I don't quite get it, but there is some question as to whether the plan is done, but DNR says it's done. I think they're the ultimate arbiter.
Well, is it that it's done, but while there's a consensus process, not everybody essentially agrees, but the consensus process did happen?
Yeah, I think there's a goals for the plan to achieve, and there's a difference between reaching those goals and finishing the plan.
I get it. So the plan is done. It's the question is about does the commission or others think that unmet goals means an unmet plan?
Right.
Hmm,
Yeah, and I think
interesting. Go ahead, Dylan.
I think that is one. I think there's kind of two. When you talk about the plan being done, I think there's kind of two things. So I think Patrick summarized that one side of it, one side of the plan being done. I think the more practical matter that the department is realizing is the plan itself. The plan itself is done, but it's not a formally finalized as it's not completely through the regulatory process. So that's kind of what we're talking about. But I do think there are some individuals who are claiming, who have referenced what Patrick says as well.
Okay. So again, it completed, but now going through the process to be officially stamped as done. Okay. Any discussion on this bill, on the amendments? Delegate Jacobs, any thoughts?
I got a lot of thoughts, but
Well, we know that, but what about on this particular bill, sir, and these amendments?
no, I think last year I had a bill in, I withdrew it right in the beginning because the oyster plan was not complete, and it kind of dealt with the same issue. Is that correct, Dylan?
Yes, sir.
And so this one is more or less clearing the path a little bit once the oyster management plan has been finalized, adopted, whatever you want to call it. And then we can then look at the possibility of some working some of those edges by different means of rotational harvest, etc., where you're taking some off an area and putting some back and things of that nature to increase the abundance of oysters. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think this bill would allow us to have that conversation.
All right now.
All right now. I mean, is that an all right now, you okay, or all right now, you don't know?
No, I'll move the amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. Any further discussion on the amendments? All in favor of the amendments signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, sorry guys, I get a little frozen every once in a while, so if I pause, it's because it's frozen. Any opposition, any abstention? The bill is amended.
Move the bill, Madam Chair.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion on the bill as amended? All in favor of the bill as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Bill moves favorably. Patrick, let's go to 1511.
Okay. Now, we don't have the amendment for this yet, but I think I can adequately explain it. It's a pretty simple bill. The
Yeah.
amendment's pretty simple too. This bill is extending the dates from the Forest Conservation Act from last year.
Mm-hmm. For the locals.
Yeah, for the locals. The department, and Dylan can correct any errors or omissions I make, but the department needs to get information to the locals for the locals to meet the deadlines, and we didn't give them enough time throughout the whole process. So the bill extends a couple of those deadlines. I didn't see any opposition to it.
No,
The
there was no
amendment
opposition.
is really technical because the qualified conservation is supposed to come online July 2024 this year. And, if we extend it, it won't come in for 2 years. And some of the counties at least have giant backlogs, projects they need to get going right now. So the amendments authorize the qualified conservation, which is forest mitigation banks, on July 1st, 2024, like is the current law. So that
Right, because I understand
their project's going.
right. Okay. And so is that the amendment? Is this Patrick, I guess what I'm saying, is this more like a voice amendment until you get the amendments, or?
Right. We'll have the amendment at full committee.
Okay, so one, it's extending the dates for the locals, and I remember there was two things going on, trying to also extend but keep the current dates in line for folks who have completed certain projects and certain requirements
Well, yeah,
with the mitigation dates.
they've already been approved, I believe.
Yeah, I know, I understand that, but it was not to, well, Dylan, go ahead.
Yeah, just to add a little bit on to what Patrick said. So the bill as introduced delays the entirety of the Forest Conservation Act from last session from going into effect. The big thing there is kind of DNR with the counties and MBIA and the kind of the industry side. We all, had conversations, and I think when the bill passed last year, there's actually DNR needs to update our technical manual next year after the law's already gone into effect. And I think through those conversations, we've learned that actually kind of everybody needs that thing before the law goes into effect. So that's kind of one part of the bill. Secondly, the bill also actually requires DNR to also update our model ordinance and regulations. So that way there is additional information that the local jurisdictions have to implement the law. And then, as Patrick referenced, with the proposed amendments, when we were digging into this deeper, qualified conservation, otherwise known as mitigation banks, the current law, I guess, is actually set to expire of July of this year, when the law from last year was supposed to go into effect. So if we just delayed the bill from last year, there would have been 2 years without mitigation banking or qualified conservation. And then we heard from counties that that's not going to work because they have a backlog, as Patrick said. So,
Right, and that's what I meant by they've been using them per se.
Yep.
Okay. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually don't see unless I'm missing it, I don't see the reprint or amendments.
There isn't, he mentioned that he
Okay.
didn't have the amendments ready, but they were simple, and that's why he was given these as a voice amendment. But I want to clarify no, it's okay. He wanted to clarify, amendment by amendment, what we are amending. And so that we would know, and that when this gets put on the vote list, then we'll have those amendments there and ready. But Patrick.
That's correct. Sometimes this time of year, we just have to go by concept, and then, get the amendment at full committee.
I move the conceptual amendments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? And so I just also want to be clear that, Patrick, we're talking about 1, 2, potentially 3 amendments as it relates to the technical changes, the extension of the dates, and the mitigation banks.
Well, the bill extends the dates.
Right. But so we're only talking about the 2 amendments.
Right.
So that is the mitigation banks.
Dylan, can you describe the solar a little better than I can, I think?
Yeah. So the other part of the bill from last year, in conversations with the solar community, on the bill last year, we learned that the solar panels, for example, are we're subjected to the afforestation requirements, i.e., if you do not trees you have to plant that you might not have cut down, in addition to the reforestation requirements. So trees that you cut down that you're going to have to replant. In that conversation, in order to get the solar community on board with the legislation from last year, we exempted them from the afforestation requirements. So if solar does not cut down trees, or solar will not be required to plant trees that they did not cut down.
And we want them to do that.
No, we want to keep the intent from last year's bill. So the other amendment that we sent to Patrick would keep that exemption from the bill last year, because in the bill last year, we actually set the grandfather date as July of of 2023 for CPCNs before, for when solar projects would start being subjected to the new standards. So there's kind of a year gray area before the afforestation exemption went into place. And I know I'm saying a lot of words. So basically, the other part of the amendment would be to maintain the solar decision that this committee made last session, make that go into effect July of this year as well.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes. So Patrick and Dylan, especially for me and the entire team here, there are 3 amendments that we're talking about.
I think just 2. I mean, Patrick, correct
Just
me.
2.
We're
So
talking.
is the solar within the mitigation bank?
No, that's a separate.
Okay, so that's 2 then.
Yep.
And
Right.
then technical amendments.
Then the solar and the mitigation banks.
That's
Those are the
2.
2 amendments.
Okay, but I thought there were some other technical changes as it relates to DNR.
No, I think that's all included in the bill. As a
Okay, so
Yeah,
we're
that's the
talking
bill.
about 2 amendments. So Delegate Ziegler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, just because this is really important to me.
Yes.
I just want to be 1,000% clear so that solar will not have to do afforestation, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
And that will be so beginning July 1st.
Of this year. And that maintains the intent of the bill from last year.
Okay. And so I just want to be clear for everybody, because Delegate Jacobs moved the amendments, but it was clear we didn't talk about the solar panel amendment. So there's 2 amendments: mitigation banks and solar panel exemptions. Maintaining those exemptions. Correct,
Right,
Patrick?
which were both in the bill last year.
Right.
Put
So
another way, we're extending the effective date of the bill by 2 years, but we're keeping the effective date of these 2 provisions.
Got it. Okay. Okay, now we have those amendments. I want to see if there's any more discussion, any more clarifications. Okay, now that we know exactly what amendments we're speaking of, would anyone like to move the amendments?
Move the amendments.
Is there a second? Any further discussion on the amendments or
I got a question.
clarifications?
I got a
Yes, sir.
question. So Patrick, there were several favorable with amendment testimonies in here. Would these amendments satisfy their concerns?
I believe so, yes, because DNR was one of the favorable with amendments.
DNR was one. Mako, no, they were favorable. Maryland Building. And
Yeah, Mako was
straight favorable.
right. NAIOP was FWA.
Yeah, they were favorable. I think, yeah, Mako said straight favorable, but I think they wanted the amendments. Yeah, these amendments do what people were asking
Yeah,
for.
because
Okay.
the building industry talks about the mitigation.
Yeah, that's what I just
Yeah.
want to verify that. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just wanted, Dylan, yes.
Yeah, just on that point, and DNR has gotten a lot of questions about this. I just want to make it very clear, we are not changing any of the policy things that happened last year in the bill. So we are just delaying the implementation date of everything except the two things with the amendment that Patrick said. So there's not any new policy changes.
Any further discussion on the amendments? Okay, the bill is amended.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, all in favor of the bill as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any further discussion? The bill moves favorable. Patrick, we can now go to, oh, that's
Okay,
it?
you got Kristen now.
Yep, okay, thank you,
Thank you all.
Kristen.
Where do you want to start?
What's the easiest?
Where the easiest would be House Bill 1017.
All right, let's go.
So technical amendments were handed out, but the bill is consolidating the two soil conservation districts that are in Frederick County into one Frederick County Soil Conservation District.
Okay. Yeah, it was simple enough. You said there was a technical amendment?
Yeah, just the references to right now it's a reference to Frederick Soil Conservation District. They wanted it to be referenced as Frederick County Soil Conservation District.
Right.
And other conforming changes, I believe.
Got it. Yep, I see it here now.
Yeah, move the amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
I want to check in with the Frederick. No, we don't have a Frederick here, sorry. Okay.
We have a delegation letter.
Okay, we do. Yeah, I have it here. Okay.
Supports with amendments. Yep.
Okay. All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Any further discussion? The bill is amended.
Move the bill as
There a
amended.
second? Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of the bill as amended signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Bill moves favorable. Do we want to go to HB 812? Do you have any further information? I have gotten some information, but
Yeah, I mean, I actually I didn't hand this out, but I could have. But would you mind if I share my screen? It's just a little
please share.
snapshot of the cigarette restitution fund and how
Yes.
it's allocated and the payments that are coming in.
yeah. Leslie, can you enable her to share her screen, please?
I think it should
Already
looks like
be?
automatically be set, yeah.
Oh, good.
So you can see the settlement payments that come in, 2023 and 2024 and what they're expecting for 2025. It's at a similar level, but it's slightly decreases over the years. And then you can see all the allocations where the crop conversion, the $900,000 that goes to the Tri-County Council for SMIDC. So I guess the idea is that, this is the money that's received. So any increase to SMIDC would mean another pot of money would have to have a decrease, similar with the 5% of settlement payments the bill requires to go to TCC. Again, that would shift money from one area to Tri-County Council, but then it would need to be made up from something else.
Thanks. So, Kristen, I learned recently that, and again, I want to remind people that, there's a House and there's a Senate. And so while sometimes we can coordinate and kind of pass a bill in the same way, when it comes to budgetary requirements, sometimes it has to be different because they have their budget, we have our budget. And so as I understand it, the Senate passed this bill with the increase
With the increase and the allowance for
and the
five-
allowance.
the 5% allocation, yeah.
And it was said to do so because while, as we saw, the cancer and the health department all literally wrote a strong letter of opposition, which I was a little taken aback by it, because I think one of the letters said that they need to go find their own money somewhere else, which I thought was a little rude. Uh, um, it they apparently, to their own admission, they admit that they have enough money per se, and that this actually doesn't hurt them. So I'm not sure what to do or not to do. And about this, I mean, I think, and this says 2023 to 2025. Does that mean that it's an every 2-year allocation or
I know it's annual.
annual?
Yeah, and so
Oh, that's just the budget
yeah,
numbers.
so these payments, we can see what's for 2023 through 2025. It doesn't project beyond that. But no, this is on an annual basis.
Okay. Okay. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And maybe I shouldn't even ask this. I'm not sure if it's relevant to the bill, but why, do we know why Medicaid went down so much? Medicaid administration?
They have a percent, I think they have a percent allocation, so, I don't know. I don't
Yes,
know
sir.
how it's allocated, if there's different,
No worries. Sorry for bringing it up.
not a bad question.
Not a bad question. I just think
I just don't know.
we didn't research that part. But I mean, and this is getting into the weeds. I don't really understand why they have never been funded at 5%.
Yeah.
And you know, I've been getting a lot of messages and emails, and I just wanted to reassure SMEDIC that like no one questions the validity or the worthiness of the work that they're doing. I just don't have these answers regarding the money piece. I don't know why they haven't been funded at 5%, which means they would be getting about, I don't know, 6 million or so a year. The
Right.
other issue I have is I'm not sure why anyone thinks $900,000 a year for the last X amount of years is sufficient without considering inflation. You know, I don't know, and I don't know, Kristen, if we want to look again to see if for whatever reason, again, why the Senate, because I could see potentially increasing it to 100,000 and striking everything else out of the bill, because we don't know why that 5% exists or doesn't exist. I'm a little torn.
Yeah, so from when I did my just brief, like just looking back, you know, to the original law, I guess there was language in the joint chairman's report indicating intent that 5% of these tobacco payments would be going to Tri-County Council. And I, like you said, I'm not sure why that hasn't happened.
Okay.
I mean, it's not in statute, but it was in JCR language.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure either. And I'm a little torn because I just don't know. I've read all I can read. I don't understand why they haven't gotten the money. And again, the opposition stated that this would like crumble them, and yet apparently on the Senate side that they alluded to having enough money and that it wouldn't actually be a problem. And again, I don't know, again, the implication. I don't know if you learned from appropriations, Kristen, whether or not if we did increase the allocation by $100,000 and essentially remove the rest, you know, is there a real issue?
Yeah, so we haven't gotten that kind of feedback from appropriations. You know, perhaps that $100,000 could be absorbable and it not cause an issue. But like you mentioned, you know, we're not a budgetary committee. I mean, I would say this involves like 3 jurisdictions, because you have the budgetary aspect, you have, you know, the agricultural interests here, and then looking at all these programs that certainly HCO would, you know, have more knowledge on. So again, no, we haven't put it in for any type of official request, and I'm not really sure if they would look at this as $100 increase as depleting, another program in an equitable way, or if it is absorbable in the way these payments come in and, how these groups receive funding. I don't have that answer. And I think to get that answer, I think we'd have to have some sort of official request in with
Okay.
appropriations.
I will, okay. I wonder if we can make, I guess I have to check with the chair, if we can make a tentative request just to see where this is in the budget, if at all. I'm sure it's clear the 900,000 is already allocated. And so.
And that's based on mandated funding. So a couple of years ago, they had been receiving $900,000, and then a couple of years ago, it was codified, but with a sunset. And so for the 2025 budget, I believe that was
right.
The governor was obligated to put in the budget, but beyond 2025,
he's not.
No longer obligated.
So I would say that I feel strongly about potentially agreeing to remove that sunset. Removing that sunset at the least, as we figure out everything else. I don't think we can figure out the 5%, but this is just one of the things that I've been sucked into this weekend, because I do want to find a way. I want to make it worthy, but I just don't understand the numbers game. And so we still have all week. We're going to meet again at some point tomorrow. So Kristen, and committee, if you don't mind, we'll put our heads together again on this, because I do think it's important, and I do want to get it right, to figure out from the people who understand numbers to figure out these numbers for SMEDEX, so we can figure out if the least we can do is remove the sunset and raise it $100,000, that's great. If the second least we can do is maintain at $900,000 and then remove the sunset, we're doing something. But I don't want to do nothing. And whatever we do, I want to make sure it's very worthwhile. So we're going to hold this again. And my apologies. Did anyone have any questions regarding this, or discussions, or any other thoughts? Okay. Let's go to HB 1358. So this is the bill to work with natural resources. Thank you, Dylan, for being on, to start establishing a city state park at Gwen Falls Lincoln Park, which, as many of you may or may not know, is the second largest urban park in the country. And so this bill did have a large fiscal note, but I think it's because we essentially kind of hit the go button, in that we decided that we're going to do this, we're going to plan, and then like in a year or two, or maybe a year, this would just be a state city park. And I don't think we're going to be able to move that fast, but we are going to move forward. And so to address the fiscal note and to address capacity for DNR, we have worked, Kristen, thank you so much, and thank you, DNR, worked to create I hate to say work group, but a work group that's going to establish this through some very careful considerations and work through the next couple of years, and then go from there. So Kristen, or do you want to go, Dylan, to go first, or?
Yeah, but so do you want me to bring up the reprint?
Yes, ma'am.
So the bill now would just leave in the language that requires the department in Baltimore City to convene a focus group. And then they would develop a list of priority needs and associated cost assessments for park operation improvements. And DNR would be required to report back. Right now it's October 1st, 2025. Dylan, I didn't even ask you about that, if that's a reasonable date to turn around, a report.
Dylan?
Yeah, I think it'll be a tight time frame, but I think I spoke to our assistant secretary today, and I think, we can jump on it, so it'll be
Well,
tight.
Dylan, if it's tight, then what would be a better date?
I mean, I think the goal, I think the goal was to give the legislature enough time for the 2026 session to review all of this materials. So, I mean, if we could push it back to potentially December 1, 2025, I mean, I think that would be
That's fine.
better.
Okay.
And
Well-
there were a few other changes, sorry, in this section that were submitted by the sponsor. And I think that's just for the composition of this focus group. And that's where that language came from and was voted on by the delegation, that piece.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, here we
The
go.
underlying language, just to,
Yes.
yeah, it was just updating, the stakeholder group.
Yes, yep, okay.
Right.
Okay, now a quick question about the December date. I know sometimes departments don't like the December date because everything is due in December. So is December okay or something else? Because
I think December would give us 2 more months. And I think this is going to be a priority. I think
sure.
we just, I spoke with Paul today, and we're likely going to work with, like a university, a higher education institution that help us with this work.
Okay.
Which will take a few months to stand up. So if we have just a few more months to get it done, I think we can make the December date work.
Okay. And I think when we talked last night, Dylan, the actual sponsor was in my office talking about this too. So he was texting you and I was texting you. And so I think, and he's okay with this, as I understand it.
I haven't I believe so. I think he understands
Yes.
the ambiguity in the fiscal note as currently
Understood.
drafted. Yeah.
Okay. And so, well, that is the bill now. Does anyone have any questions about this bill? Any concerns about this bill? Yes, Delegate Jacobs.
Talk to me about the fiscal note now.
The fiscal note now should, as I'm hearing, and Kristen can correct me, it may be about $100,000.
That's what I've heard from DNR.
Yes.
Yeah.
From
Is that still
DNR.
correct, Dylan?
Yeah, I would just, again, I think part of the problem was the original fiscal note. There was a lot of ambiguity because, as the chair said, we were just kind of flipping the switch and creating park without understanding how much it was going to cost. So this kind of alleviates that ambiguity, allows the department and the city to report back prior to the 26th session with what it's going to actually cost. So the tangible fiscal note here is going to be about $100,000 to do all of this work on the front end to figure out all of this.
And Delegate Jacobs, at first, the fiscal notice stated $500,000 because they had some surveying and they had some a lot of big plans that were kind of being pushed for that first year. And then the fiscal note estimated $20 to $30 million to essentially operate the park. So the way I saw it was that the fiscal note interpreted this bill as essentially a year or so study, and then bang, we have a park. So Delegate Delegate Jacobs, are you done?
Now, is this money going to come out of the Outdoors Act money, or where is it going to come from?
I don't think we've had the conversation where it would specifically come from. I can figure that question out.
Well, Dylan, I think given the fact that this is a recommendation from the Greater Outdoors Act to work with the city for this particular park, I would say that it would make sense that it came from it, but if you can figure that out for us, it would be helpful.
The one other thing I wanted to mention, the reason why I said that was that if you recall, the Bainbridge proposed state park was amended onto that bill. I guess it was 2 years ago, and the funding for that preliminary work was done through the Great Outdoors Act. That's the reason why I was asking that question.
A good question. Dylan will find out for us. Is that it, Delegate Jacobs? Is there anything else? You're good. Okay, Delegate Ziegler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say how important I think this is. I can't imagine Boston without the Commons or New York City without Central Park. And I'm old enough to remember when New York City was bankrupt
Mhm.
And, you know, some 3 mayors in a row had the vision to look past the crack pipes and the trash and, you know, turn it into a world financial capital. And I really can't imagine Baltimore coming into its own without a park. I just feel like that city is going to be a major economic driver for this state, but only if we're willing to think of it how it's gonna be, you know, and this is to me a huge part of this, whatever it costs. I mean, not whatever it costs.
Yeah, no, I hear you, Delegate. And I want to clarify as well that, you know, this is Gwynn Falls Lincoln Park is one of many parks in Baltimore City. And as the city has been segregated and redlined for so long, when you go to certain parts of the city, certain parks do resemble and have brought up economic well-being in the city in some areas, but not in other areas. We think about Patterson Park, great park. Clifton Park, great park as well. But some people would say, well, it's on the edge. Well, it's supposed to be the home of Johns Hopkins University before the railroad apparently was supposed to come through. So I think this helps bring some of that kind of like green equity to the west side of Baltimore City, because we do have many parks and they should all be just as wonderful and an economic engine as like the Patterson parks of the city. And so I appreciate your advocacy, Delegate Ziegler, for this.
It's the size of this.
I mean, it is, yes, it's huge.
It's so cool.
It is.
Yeah.
Delegate Ruth.
Thank you. And it's huge, and it's also because it touches on Baltimore County, right? I mean, it comes right up to the city line near my district. I think there's great opportunities for connecting to it there, and a lot of future possibilities.
Yeah, I got nephews. I need to I usually bring them at the kind of the city county line on their bikes. I haven't done that in a while, although I just bought them new bikes. They don't really use them. Bad kids. Any other discussion about the amendments to this bill that reduces the fiscal note and kind of moves this process forward without such a big financial hit? Dylan, when do you think you can get that information to Delegate Jacobs?
I just texted somebody.
Got
I
it.
would say 10 minutes, maybe 20
No
minutes.
problem. Is there a desire to move the amendments?
Move the amendments.
There's a second.
Second.
Thank you so much. Any further discussion on the amendments? And I know we're going to get some information for Delegate Jacobs. Nope. All in favor of the amendments signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstentions? Anybody hungry? The bill as amended.
Move the bill.
Second. All right. Any further discussion on the bill as amended? Okay. All those in favor of the bill as amended signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstentions? Thank you all so much. Most importantly, thank you, poor Kristen and poor Dylan. I've been running ragged about this. Because this is a Baltimore City bill, we need to send this back to delegation. We meet on Friday, I believe, to support the kind of updated version of this bill.
And Madam Chair, also,
Yes.
it does trigger, since it's at that $100,000
Yes.
level, it will trigger a need, but I can put that into the system.
As I understand it, yes, please put it in the system, but I had talked to the chair earlier this week of appropriations who said he wanted to do something, he just could not do it at the amount that the fiscal note officially came in. So hopefully this is not a big lift. Great work, guys. That is it. We held 812 and 770, and hopefully we can listen out for when we're going to meet again. We'll probably meet again tomorrow before voting, and then again as we kind of pull out some of these bills. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
See you all soon.